Welcome to A Woman's Work, where you'll find ways to go from surviving to thriving while balancing the demands of womanhood in today's society.
Hey guys, it's your host Samara James coming to you once again from my heart to yours. I hope that your week was good to you and that you were good to your week. I'm happy to be with you guys again to discuss this topic. And for some of you, the title may be a little weird. I kind of debated on the title because not a lot of people are familiar with transmutation. But I really wanted those who are familiar to be able to search and find this podcast. So I went ahead and titled it The Art of Transmutation. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with that term and you decided to tune in anyway and learn something new, kudos to you. Thank you for joining me today. And you won't be sorry that you listened in. So what is transmutation? Transmutation, as defined, if you look it up on the internet, says the action of changing or the state of being changed into another form. So when I talk about the art of transmutation, I'm talking about specifically the art of transmuting our thoughts. So why is this such an important topic? So one of the things that I've been learning in my experiences with meditation and mindfulness, which is really the foundation of this podcast, is that thoughts are things. And what does that mean? So I think that in today's society, we're kind of taught that we are our thoughts. And so we think things about ourselves, we think things about other people, we think things about our circumstances, and we believe that that's just the way it is, that that's just who we are, that that's just how the world is. Well, when I was introduced to the idea that thoughts are actually things and that we are not thoughts, that we can observe our own thoughts even, it was difficult to swallow at first. I just couldn't imagine that what I was thinking wasn't what is, that I could somehow separate myself from what I was thinking. So I apologize, guys. Today is going to be heavy stuff, but hopefully it's helpful when we get to the end. So the next level, after realizing that my thoughts were separate from me, which I achieved through meditation, and for me, I chose to when sitting quietly, just imagine that those thoughts were like clouds passing by, that I could look at them, that I could watch them, and that they could disappear out of view. And that was enough to just kind of throw me for a loop, because I really was able to take thoughts that had been, circulating through my mind and just release them. Well, once I realized that thoughts were things that were observable, just like anything else, the next level was to understand that you can change the structure of thoughts. If you're observing a thought, you can look at the thought and you can rearrange the thought and you can change the thought into something else. So what I want to talk to you guys today about is how to do that. And you can imagine why that's beneficial. Like I mentioned before, a lot of us go through life having all these thoughts about ourselves and others and situations, and we feel stuck. And sometimes that even leads to things like depression. It contributes or exacerbates mental illness. And being able to switch those thoughts into things that serve us more, into things that make us happier, into things that move us towards our desires in life is a very powerful skill to have. And so that's what I want to share with you guys today. One of the roadblocks that I ran into when trying to understand how to transmute my thoughts was the whole idea that just by repeating something to yourself over and over, that you could change your belief about it. There's some truth to that. Eventually, if you keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, you start to believe what you're saying. But if your subconscious beliefs or if your experience is contradicting the thing that you're trying to repeat to yourself, then this method is ineffective. And so there was a point in time before I, started using this method I'm going to share with you all, that I thought that there was no way that I could change my thoughts, even though I was able to observe them. So today I want to tell you guys about a 3-step process that I used for transmuting every thought, not necessarily into a positive thought, but into something that serves me, into something that moves me closer to what it is that I desire in my life. before being able to successfully start to change my thoughts into more productive thoughts, I had to realize that my emotions were an important key to understanding when it was necessary to try to transform a thought into a different thought. So if you think about it, whatever desires that we have for our lives, things that we say that we want, whether they're material or whether they have to do with relationships or whatever, we want those things because we believe that they will put us in a certain state of mind, that they will make us feel good. And so for me, the trigger to knowing when I need to go and examine a thought and change it into a different thought is how I feel. If I'm feeling down, or if I'm feeling frustrated, or if I'm feeling angry and I don't want to feel that way, that is the indicator that I need to sit with my thoughts and examine them closely. And it used to be hard for me to believe that I could take any thought and change it into a thought that gave me a feeling that I wanted, feelings of joy, contentment, peace. But really, there is no limit to, or there's no boundaries as far as what kinds of thoughts or what kinds of negative situations or situations that we perceive as negative that we can transform into something that's positive. This really works with anything. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care if, you're dealing with, murderers and rapists. You can transmute your thoughts so that that doesn't weigh you down. And transmuting a thought doesn't necessarily mean you're lying to yourself, because that actually will have the opposite effect. It just means that you take your thoughts and you examine them closely and you rearrange them so that these things that you perceive as negative don't weigh you down emotionally, so that you can reach that feeling state that you're always looking for, the feeling of being happy, which is, defined differently by different people. So the first step in the process that I use for transmuting my thoughts is sitting with a negative emotion. I had this conversation yesterday at a wellness retreat that I was attending, but I've also had this conversation with friends, and it's a conversation about depression and sadness. A lot of times because we don't want to feel sad, or we don't want to feel angry, or whatever undesirable emotion we have, we try to push it away, or we make ourselves feel guilty for having the emotion, instead of seeing the emotion as something that is serving us, something that is initiating or helping us to trigger a process of getting to the emotional state that we do desire by changing our thoughts and sometimes our circumstances. So that first step is sitting with that emotion, honoring that emotion, that negative, quote unquote, negative emotion, allowing it to fully process. For me, I'm a writer. And so if I'm experiencing an emotion that is uncomfortable, then I'll sit and I'll write about it so that I can organize my thoughts around it. And I just give it the respect that it deserves, because we live in an environment of duality, and without, the negative, we can't have the positive. Without the darkness, we can't have the light. And so, like I said, a good first step to being able to transform a thought is allowing yourself to feel the emotion that comes along with that original thought. And so what I do is sit with the sadness or the anger and try to understand it, and I give it respect, and I show gratitude that I have it, that I have the ability to have this range of emotions to help me navigate my experience. So then after I've done that, it's really, really easy to let it go. It's kind of like when a toddler is having a tantrum, right? If you indulge, like if you're yelling at the toddler, if you're trying to force the toddler to do something, they're going to dig their heels deeper and deeper into that tantrum. And it's the same with our emotions. If we try to fight our emotions, a lot of times we will just dig ourselves deeper into that feeling that we don't want to experience. And so once I give that feeling the respect, the gratitude, once I honor it and thank it for allowing me to realize I need to make a change, it passes easily. And this process gets shorter and shorter and shorter for me over time. Sometimes I can be in the middle of an experience that generates a negative emotion in me because of what I'm thinking about that experience. And within, 60 seconds, I will have gone through this entire process and the emotion will have passed. And that's very different from pushing it down, giving it respect, saying, It's okay for me to be angry. It's okay for me to be sad. It's okay for me to be envious. There's all kinds of emotions that come up that we feel. Allows it to pass really quickly. It's almost like it's almost like you acknowledging it and giving it respect is what it wanted, and then it moves away. So that's the first step, sitting with the emotion, allowing it to pass through you, understanding that it's okay that you feel that emotion, no matter what it is. The second step is to, now that your emotions have calmed down, understand your thought objectively. A lot of times it'll help to write the thought on a piece of paper. For me, I can just imagine the thought in my mind, and I imagine it with all of my senses. But writing it down and looking at it, and then asking yourself a series of questions like, okay, what's true about this thought? What is based in what I see? Is there another way to look at this? Could there be another possibility? What are some of the different perspectives that I could attach to this thought? What might the other people who are involved in the situation be thinking? And asking yourself these questions kind of opens you up. And what happens is, so you write down the original thought, and once you start asking yourself these questions, if you want, you don't have to, you can write down all the answers to those questions. And then what you're left with is a list of options. So you can, when you ask yourself these questions, you have your thought there. You've broken it down. You've looked at what is quote unquote true. You've looked at it from different perspectives. Now you have more options as far as how you can choose to look at the situation. And then what you can do from there is choose one of the answers to your questions as the new thought, or you can rearrange and come up with a brand new thought. So this might sound complicated. I'll give you an example. As you all know, who listen to the podcast regularly, my house flooded during Hurricane Harvey. Now, watching the news, listening to, when I told people what happened, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's so terrible. Looking at all the devastation on the news really weighed me down. I was like, oh, woe is me. This is terrible. This is like one of the worst things that can happen to a person in their life. Well, I got tired of feeling that way because it started to make me make fear-based decisions in every area of my life. I was looking at this setback and thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this differently. I've got to, I had lost some relationships with people along the way in my spiritual journey that could have helped me in that process. And I was thinking, oh, I need to reconnect to those people and those toxic relationships because at least they would have been able to help me during this flood. And it was so bad. My thoughts were so negative that for a minute, I was unable to see all of the blessings during this journey to getting back into our house. If I have to do a whole other podcast episode on it, but every step of the way, there were angels who were introduced into my life. There were circumstances that worked out in my favor. Like, it was just truly a blessed experience. And the way I ultimately decided to look at it is, number one, my house is 14 years old and it needed to be renovated. But because there's never a good time to stop and do a major project like that, especially if you're a parent and a single parent at that, you never feel like you're going to have the time. I had been procrastinating on a lot of work that needed to be done on my house. Well, having my house flood forced me to do a lot of the things that I had been wanting to do anyway. And I got assistance from people, from organizations to do it. And so really at the end of the day, a goal that I had had in mind for years was accomplished through what everyone else saw as a tragedy. And even when I share that with people, I think they think that I'm just, trying to make myself feel better about the situation. But I honestly am so grateful that my house flooded. And that's what happens when you're able to transmute thoughts and when you're able to sit with yourself, respect your emotions and your feelings, dissect your thoughts, and have the presence of mind, the mindfulness to rearrange those thoughts into things that serve you. One way to look at it is, so the 3 steps were to sit with the emotions, the negative emotions, and let them pass. Second step was to examine the current thought. The third step was to rearrange, re-examine the thought and change it into something that serves you. And so a lot of people will say, oh, that's just, lying to yourself, or, oh, that's just wishful thinking, or, whatever. But the truth is, for every situation, for every circumstance, there are a million truths. There's like infinite truths that you can perceive. And what we can do is choose the truth that we focus in on. So yes, it's true that, floods are terrible and devastating and dangerous. It's also true that I have a brand new house, pretty much. Which truth am I going to choose to meditate on? And the truth that I choose to meditate on is going to determine how I feel. And like we talked about earlier, every desire that we have, everything that we think that we want, is because we believe that it will make us feel good. And so if I choose the truth out of all of the infinite perspectives that I can choose, if I choose the truth that makes me feel good, then I've given myself a shortcut to that feeling that I want, that I've attached to all these desires that I have. And so that's why being able to transmute a thought is so powerful, because it gives you the ability to feel good in every moment. And I know my whole life, we live in a society where if you turn on the news, they like to focus on the bad, because the bad just has a more lasting impact. Like, it's more sensational. And so, a lot of people around us like to complain, focus on the bad, talk about the bad. And all of those types of thoughts make you sad. And if that has been your default way of moving through life, then at first it can seem difficult to even understand the concept of transmuting your thoughts, and then to actually take the steps, because the first couple of times that you try it, it'll feel heavy. It'll feel silly even. But the more you do it and the better you feel. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, 80% of the time I was stressed or sad or upset or trying to solve a problem. And maybe 20% of the time I felt happy. We kind of it's like living for the weekend or living for those small moments. Well, the more I practiced transmuting my thoughts, the ratio was switched. Now 80% of the time I feel really, really happy and satisfied. And maybe 20% of the time, I run into these negative emotions. And because now the negative emotions are the minority, it's like a blip on the screen. It's so easy to take my thoughts and switch them to something that makes me feel better. And so I go through my days feeling good. And I just, I feel this strong desire to share that with everyone. Because imagine what the world would be like if everyone was feeling good about their situation. If everyone could take every circumstance and turn it into something positive, something that they could see benefits them. Imagine how relationships can be transformed that way. Imagine, being connected to someone and being frustrated with that person and being able to take that frustration and transmute it into a growth experience, or transmute it into more deep love for that person. It's amazing what can happen when we start to do this. So that's really it. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as respecting your emotions, catching your thoughts, looking at them with a critical eye, and rearranging them so that you choose the truth, because there's lots of different ways to look at a situation that are true. You choose the truth that allows you to experience the feelings that you want to experience. And that's all I have for you guys today. I think I mentioned on the last episode that the highfrequencywoman.com website is back up, showing all of the episodes. And also I have another website, remoteworkinggirl.com, to help people live more balanced lives by negotiating work from home schedules with their employers. I have an ebook that will be out very soon. It's in the final stages of being published, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Thank you so much for listening in, and I will talk with you guys next week.
Thanks so much for listening in. If you like or even love what you're hearing, the best way to make sure this information reaches other women looking to experience more joy is to review and subscribe. If the things you've heard have made any impact in your life at all, leave a quick note saying what you love about the show. It could be your act of gratitude for the day, and it's your way of saying thank you for all the insight provided every week. Remember to check us out for more life design tools, tips, and tricks at highfrequencywoman.com.